Before we do, some housekeeping. Please sign in. My coworker Stephanie has downloaded the sign-in sheet in the chat box. So make sure that you use that to sign in. We need to capture your attendance. If you need to choose a language, the globe at the bottom will allow you to do that. And I'm going to ask Carmen to come on and share that now. Carmen?
Unmuted.
Unmuted.
Buenos días a todos. Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a la reunión del día de hoy. Si desean escuchar esta reunión en español y necesitan interpretación y están en su computadora portátil, pueden elegir el globo que está abajo en su menú y elegir interpretación en español. Si están en un teléfono celular o tableta, abajito en la esquina van a ver 3 puntitos donde dice more o más y van a poder elegir el idioma en español. Gracias.
Thank you, Carmen. Next slide. So this meeting will be recorded, just so you know. Thank you for your cooperation. So today, our desired results. This is what we want to get out of this meeting today. We're still building our relationships with one another. We're getting to know each other, and we're going to continue practice of root analysis. So we are still digging deep in the root analysis because we are finding out where we want to focus on for our CCA. Today, we're going to be looking at education. Next slide, please. So today's agenda is we're going to have an icebreaker with our fellow, our man, Omar, and then we're going to have our meeting agreements. I'm hoping one of you will read that for us. Then we're going to continue our root cause analysis on our domain 2, which is education. And we are really going to deep dive that. Then we're going to have a report out and some closing reflections and thoughts. We're getting closer and closer, but we have some work to do. So before we go any further, I'm going to ask Omar to come up and we're going to do our icebreaker for this morning.
Thank you for that, Jarrell. So today's icebreaker: what is one positive thing life is teaching you right now? For me, I feel like I've learned a lot from the Trauma-Informed Masterclass as well as the Train the Trainer. I'd like to say I'm already starting to use that both on my family and then just in the workplace. I feel like it really brought a lot of perspective into my own personal traumas and then just workplace traumas. So if anybody else would like to go ahead and share something that one positive thing that life is teaching them right now.
I can share a little bit
Sure.
that, right now in the midst of these wars and these horrible things that are happening, mass shootings, I think it really, to see such negativity and to see such horrible atrocities happening, it really then just solidifies the value of life for me, and how at times I think we just take that for granted, but I think we need to really just value each other, value ourselves, and just life itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Abby.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to go?
Do we have anyone online? That's what I said too.
If not, I think we can go ahead and move forward.
Okay.
Jarrell?
Yeah, I want to say though, what is one positive thing life is teaching me right now is to appreciate those who are in my life, appreciate the gift of life, and I'm learning to appreciate that more and more as I get older. But the positive thing is that there are good things that are happening We don't always see them on the news, but I still have access to good things that are happening. So if there's
Thank
no
you,
one else that would like to share, we're going to move on to our next slide.
Can
Who
you
would
hear me?
like to read our meeting agreements for today?
Okay.
Any volunteers? Go ahead, Tess.
Be punctual, stay present and engaged on topic. Put the focus on the future. Be authentic, yourself. One person speaks at a time. Agree to disagree respectfully. Finish your sentence, not your paragraph. Set up, step back. Exercise confidentiality when necessary. Be patient and open to that technology. Keep your video on if possible. Assume positive intentions. A rainy day will make flowers.
Yes.
Separate person from the row. Be creative and have fun.
Yes, 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 yes. And we are going to have fun today, but we are going to, in place of having not just fun, but we're gonna have fun, but we're gonna do some work. It's gonna exercise our brains, but it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So next slide, please. Education. At this portion, I'm going to turn this over to Sylvia, and she's going to really lead us into the deeper dive. Sylvia?
And I'll invite Carla to this again. You know, we're getting closer and closer to establishing our community change agenda. You all have done some tremendous work in the past 6 to 8 months in terms of narrowing it down to the domains, narrowing it down. So one of the things we're going to do, and it's going to be a little bit different than we've used that we've done in the past, but we are going to continue working on getting to the root cause of some of the education issues that have come up. And what we'll do is we'll demonstrate on a whiteboard, and you'll see, we'll explain everything in terms of what we're doing. But really what we're trying to get to is break it down some more so that we can start finalizing what specific area in the education domain that we really want to focus on. And when we did the data mats for education back in, I think education was done in May, we sat around and we really had some deep dive conversations into the issues that came up from the data. And from that, we gathered a lot of the information, both on the Jam boards online and in person. We had a lot of notes in terms of what areas specifically were more impacting our community than not. We had, so we put all that together, and that's part of what we're going to do in terms today of even breaking those areas down. But I'm going to invite my colleague Carla here to really just kind of give us an overview as to how we're going to do this, why are we doing it, and where we're heading with this.
Thank you. Okay, so education is one of the domains that we chose. We already went through the child, youth, and family domain. We spent some great time. We had great conversations specifically on that domain. And so today we're going to focus and start the conversations around education. I invite you to, especially for those who are online, if you have access to the State of the Child report, that one will be very handy. If you have access to the education data mat, that'll be really handy as well. I think it really helps us to just refer back to the data, the findings that the State of the Child report really highlighted as we dive into this conversation and begin to explore the root cause of the 3 topics that we're going to focus on for this domain. If you can go on to the next slide, please. And so the way that we'll go about this, we're going to start by defining the problem. We're gonna, we have the data collected, and then we're gonna identify some possible causal factors. And then again, we're gonna, it really helps to have State of the Child report and the data mats in front of you as we dive into this conversation. If you can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then as we go through these conversations, I'd like you to think about what are the conditions that are at play here. The
what are some of the policies, what are some of the practices, resources, how are resources being distributed among the education. And again, in the 3 topics that we'll explore, again, we'll probably only get through 1 today, but that's totally fine. Think about the relationships, the connections, and the power dynamics in terms of education. Why are things set the way that they are? Why are resources spread the way that they are? And then think about what are some of the mental models, some of the ways of thinking that further impact this domain. And then here we do have the definitions, both in English and Spanish, and we'll have them on the whiteboard as well. So if you can go on to the whiteboard next, right? Can somebody start the whiteboard for us, please? I did. Give us a minute, this should bring the whiteboard up.
And a lot of the stuff we've gone through, I think for some of you, like, this is a repeat of, you know, that we've constantly gone through some of these, the definitions, the conditions of change. But we just wanna review it for those that haven't, been through it. And all of this information will also be emailed today after the meeting, just to, if you don't have it already, just to add it, we'll also include the
Jerome, can you click?
education.
Okay, no, she has to put whiteboard. Nadia, can you share the whiteboard?
I'm sharing it online.
She shared.
Yes,
online.
she's sharing it, it's just loading.
Yeah, it's just.
I was just making a second.
Okay, so then, as we're waiting for it to load, no worries. I'll just share the 3 topics that we're going to talk about in the education domain are the special student population, challenges in the AV educational system, and childcare. Again, this is 3 very broad topics, so we're not gonna get through all 3 today. It's totally fine. What we're going to start with is the special student population. If you guys recall in the data mat, there was a portion that was titled special student population, and then it gave us a lot of data. And so I kind of want to break that up a little bit. Okay, it's coming. And so when we look at the data mat, we can see that who makes up the student population is English language learners, those who are categorized as numbers. The student population is 63.2% Latino, and we only have 17.9% Latino staff. I believe certified, was it certified? I believe it was certified staff, teachers and staff. And then within the Black population, we have 17% of our student population who makes up the Black community. And only 7.1% of teachers are Black within the Antelope Valley area. And so this is really important because what we're seeing is a lack of representation, which could also be a lack of cultural understanding. Students, Black and Latino students might not be seeing themselves be adequately represented in the classrooms. And before I go into all of that, I want you to keep that in mind because when we start the conversation, this is really what we want to focus on. If you could zoom into the ideas and priorities, right over here, this section. Okay. Thank you so much. Some of the things that we've talked about, that we say, you know, well, this is what's contributing to this disproportionality and this inequity. We need more information and resources to guide parents. And so the question is, if we provide more information and resources, does the inequity go away? No, right? If we offer more dual language programs, does the inequity go away?
It doesn't necessarily go away,
depending on the child or the family, it offers them their own individual strength. But it's not gonna take over for what another race is doing. It gives them more empowerment to do it on their own.
Thank you. So it might address an underlying symptom, but not the root cause, right? Which one were the other ones? Sorry. Let's see here. And I've pinpointed them here for us. The third posted on the right-hand column is with the median income so low, that means that they are mostly low-paying jobs which impact the special population. If we increase the income, does it make the problem go away?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, right? And so that's where we really want to dig deep. What do we have to address? What do we really have to focus on? What do we want our community change agenda to address in order for us to be able to see that systemic change? Is that helpful? Okay. I want to stop here because I feel like I just overloaded you guys with information. And that's totally fine. I want to hear from folks online if anybody has any questions, comments. How are we feeling?
Can you guys hear online from online?
Can you
Hello?
read this?
Can I jump in here?
Push the green button.
Wait. Hold on, let me just. I also wanted to just jump in real quick, as we see on the board. There's so much information on this whiteboard, there's a lot of stuff, but we've kind of put it together so that we can see where we're going next. So when we see the section of. We see the section of priorities, right? So those are the ones we're gonna get the root cause to, right? Then we're gonna see the strategies, and what that means is. Once we choose really what is the root cause of some of these problems that are happening in this area. We're gonna look at the 6 conditions of change. So for example, let's just say that our priority is gonna be, you know, for right now, let's just say lack of resources, right? But we're gonna get to the root cause of that. Then what's gonna happen is then we're gonna say, okay, now we've got a root cause analysis. Now, what part of the system do we wanna change? And then you look at the 6 conditions of change and you look at policy, practices, resource flows, relationship, and we're gonna pick one of those. But this is not like I just wanna go through, like, this is work that's gonna take a week or 2 weeks or a month to do, you know, we're not gonna be able to do all that. So, but we just want you to start thinking about it, as we do the root cause, also start thinking about how do we wanna address policy in this area? Do we wanna address the resources that are in this area? Do we wanna address the mental models? And we've known and we've seen that the mental models is the area, you know, that's the hardest to shift, right? But we've seen it happening. We've seen people, you know, start saying like, we've had a lot of the residents say like, oh, it's making sense. Now I realize how we have to dig deeper. So we'll be able to do, you know, some of that. And then, but we'll start right now. We'll have Carla still continue us through the root cause analysis. And ultimately, we'll have all this filled out. And ultimately, what we'll get from here is from these 3 things, sorry, out of the camera, from these 3 sections of education, we're gonna narrow it down to what is the one area that we want to focus on. And the reality is that once we get that community change agenda, areas of other areas in the data map will actually be part of it. Everything that we talked before, that even though we might not have chosen the domain of environment or the domain of mental health or health, we know that there's still things that are intersecting. And so that's the ultimate goal, is to get to a community change agenda that really addresses all of this, right?
Alrighty, thank you. So you can see the blue post-its down at the bottom. We only have 4, right? So the goal is not to fill up the board with more post-its. It's to identify 3 or 4 root causes that are contributing to the disproportionality of equity in the Antelope Valley, and that affects the the special student population. Again, I'd like to hear from you guys here in the room. My brain is trying to balance virtually and in person. So what are some thoughts? What are some things that are going through your head?
Can you guys hear?
You can't hear my.
What specifically are you asking?
Just given the information, if you had to kind of take a stab at it, you know, what do you feel is might be a leading root cause here? And I say
Hello?
might because it might not be it, right? We're gonna start general and then funnel our way down.
In my
Hello?
opinion, I think with a lot of the families that I do come in contact with, one specific that I can think about right now, it's not, well, this particular family, it's not the lack of resources, because this particular family that I'm dealing with, they both have good jobs, they both work at the
No
base,
sé si ella tiene
both
los tapones, no tiene los
college
tapones.
educated, in the military. They're unorganized so far as their family dynamic at home. They have one child that has cerebral palsy, so he works at home study school at home. He's 15. Then the other daughter is 16. She's on a home study program at Lancaster High School. And then the other son is 17. Same, they were like back-to-back kids. But the parents are never home. They leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. They get back home at 7:30 at night. One works in Valencia, the other one works at the base. The kids are just alone by themselves, so far as cooking for themselves, cleaning. And I see the one little girl just walking up and down the street. And so I've started picking her up and bringing her to my house. You know, I've met the mom, I've met the dad. She goes to dance studio where my daughter goes to dance studio. And I'm just like, what's going on with you? And she says, I don't like being at home because I'm there by myself. And I said, well, what's going on? And so she's explaining to me. So I called the mom on the phone and she's like, Miss Kelly, what you want me to do? I work, I gotta pay the bills, I have to provide money for the cars and for insurance and everything. I can't be home with her. I can't take her to the dance studio. I can't be there on Saturday. I can't help her with the homework. I can't do any of this stuff because I have to work. So it's like, I can't fault her for working, but then her daughter is 15 years old, just wandering around town. I've seen her at Walmart walking around. I've seen her sitting up at McDonald's, using their internet. And it's like, who is protecting this child? You know, I mean, so it's for this family, it's not lack of money. They have the money, but it's lack of time being prioritized to where these children are raising themselves.
Children raising themselves.
Basically, you know, so it's like, I really don't know what to do about that situation. I just took it upon myself and I just said, come on. Like when I leave here, I'm going to pick her up. Cause I've been giving her activities and things, all the stuff that we talk about here. I've taught her how to garden. We talked about like body care and hair care and, you know, eating nutrition, because she was just eating chips and soda and, you know, stuff like that. So we talked about that kind of thing. Whereas I know the mom wanted to, but she's at work. She's not there to give her the structure that she needs.
Can I get a marker and maybe we can take down notes over here as well? Or, yeah, I don't think we'd be able to see it if we put it on here.
Brian?
Yes, we're gonna call on Brian next, but I'm hearing, so again, because we see that on one of these posts, it says lack of resources, and then at the same time, we know that the AV has become a very resourceful place. We do what we can with what we have, and while our services are, I hear this a lot, you know, where our caseworkers are overwhelmed with the amount of work that they have to do, right, to meet the need. And so the community is coming together to address the issues as best as they can. But if we don't address the underlying issues, this work is never going to go away.
Right.
So children taking care of themselves. Another thing that she mentioned was parents not being home. And so I want to dig deeper to these two and ask why, right? But before we do that, I want to hear from Brian and hear his thoughts. Can you mute?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry, yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Johnson. So just, there's a lot that's swirling through my head right now in the state of our children. I've had two children go through the public school in the city of Lancaster, and I currently have one right now in private school. We thought private school would be better, which is not much better. One of the things that we see, I think you said it earlier, 7% of the teachers are African American. That has been an issue in the Antelope Valley for quite some time. I think one of the things that I've seen as a parent raising children in the school district is that the teachers just don't understand and cannot communicate effectively with our children, with our students. I think that the school districts at some point we need to start looking at trying to incentivize Black teachers to come out to Antelope Valley, right? If that means going to HBCUs and really trying to recruit Black teachers to be able to come and educate our children. We've seen that through the history of the school system that Black children have suffered the most. And at some point in time, we just say, we have to make a change. Going back to what the lady said earlier, it's a huge issue out here in the Antelope Valley. The wages that people make out here, you can barely survive, and especially when it comes to the Black community. So what happens is that you still have a lot of Black families working two jobs or driving down below to get a decent wage. So as she said, the children are at home with very little supervision. And then when the parents do come home, the parents are too tired to sit and try to do homework. So that's just a few things that were kind of swirling in my head. I know we're looking at the more root cause. The root cause is systemic. We can really look and go back into the history and see how Black children have been treated in our public school system. So those are just a few of my thoughts, you guys.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for sharing. And one of the key things here that I noted down was 7% teachers are Black. And I'm gonna go ahead and tackle that one, and then we'll get back to the other two. My question is why? Why are only 7% of teachers Black in the Antelope Valley?
There could be two answers for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm so sorry, what's your name?
Kelly.
Kelly, no, we can get name tags next time. I'll go with Miss Kelly, and then if anyone else would like to comment, go ahead and raise your little hand. And that way I can kind of like bounce back and forth. You guys help me out and remind me to look this way, okay? So again, and please take time to think about these questions. There's no rush to jump into an answer. That's what this time is for, okay? So Miss Kelly.
We can't hear online.
The lack of, I don't even want to say it's a resource. They said one of the wages are not very good as much as they get in the Valley or in LA. It's the lack of community. They feel sometimes isolated, or there's so many opinions about the way Black children are raised versus other races. They can't hear her online.
You can't. Is there any way? Maybe can I move the?
We can hear now.
Can you guys hear Miss Kelly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
okay.
they can hear.
Some of the teachers are saying there's a lack of community and family dynamics because some of the children, they feel as if they're being picked upon more than so far as the African American children or the white children. Me being a culture broker, I've had to deal with some of those situations, whereas the teachers, the white teachers, have called in, filed complaints with Department of Services if the kids' hair to them didn't look kept, whereas they had braids or dreads or something like that, whereas a Black teacher would have never filed a complaint. But a white teacher or some of the Hispanic teachers filed a complaint saying the child didn't look kept. Or in the way they the language, the slang, things like that they use, or some of the family dynamics. I've had teachers call in and say, well, the mom has 6 kids by 6 different people. And she'll call in and say, well, she can't possibly be able to take care of all of them. So she'll call in and file a complaint. And it's like, okay, what is she doing wrong? So a lot of the Black teachers that I do know just don't want to deal with the problem because there's a lack of sensitivity, a lack of education, a lack of cultural training. or
Mm.
the different cultures.
Wow.
I've had some teachers who are Indian and who are Iranian, different things like that. They say they will not work up here because some of the white teachers look at them different if they're wearing the hijab or if they're wearing certain religious symbols. They just said, we just don't want to do it. So we can live here, but we'd rather work somewhere else. So to me, it's just a lack of cultural training that the teachers just don't want to be bothered.
You got it? Okay. Thank you. Thank
And that's
you.
stressful.
Yes.
We'll come back to that because that goes deeper.
It is,
Right?
really deeper. Yeah.
All right, I want to hear, do we have anyone online? And if not,
You're ready, give them a second in the chat.
Oh. thank you.
Can we read that or did she just did? Okay, so Doretta said in the chat box, teacher shortage potentially due to negative narrative about field of teaching and narrative about bad kids opposed to attending to the impact of stages of development and behavior and environmental influence on the behavior of students and adults within education.
I think one key thing that we picked up here was the negative narrative, right? Because that's a mental model, right? That we would have to shift. You spoke about the community. There's no sense of community. That's a mental model, right? And when we look at the numbers is if we have a disproportionality and diversity of teachers and school staff that are contributing to the lack of cultural understanding, if we don't address this, we're going to keep going in circles. We're going to continue to see high suspension rates for our Black community. We're going to continue to see high suspension rates for socially disadvantaged Black, Latino, Native American, Alaskan Indian, I think that's title here. We're going to continue to see that, right?
We have a hand up. We have a hand up.
Ms. Doretta, mute.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I won't take too much time. I just kind of wanted to touch on, teachers. It is necessary to have teaching staff that, are familiar or look like the students. But I want to stress the importance of not ruling out. There are teachers that don't look like our students that actually really care a lot about our students. Those teachers are often marginalized too. And what we're missing is our positions at the table to really get a head start on identifying whom is being placed in those positions that are going to lead the education within these schools. That individual has great impact on your director of education, human resources, making sure things are equitable within the district. As well, I emphasize this a lot. We tend to focus on school districts when things go wrong, and we point the finger at districts. However, there's a saying that said that you point one finger at everybody else, there's still three pointing back at us, right? The community. There are times that we should be present in school districts, first understanding the different school districts and the needs of the different school districts here in the Antelope Valley. Perfect example is, I'll just be candid and say in my district right now, we're currently looking for a superintendent. How many community members are actually aware of the importance of identifying and selecting a superintendent that's going to enforce and facilitate these things that we're talking about in these meetings? And those are open meetings. There are firms that are identified that are going to identify candidates. There's going to be interviews for candidates for superintendent positions. And I'm just using my district as an example, but we should be keeping up with these things in all districts. There's also other entities that may interfere with pushing the goals that we're speaking to that may need to be addressed. What associations actually govern over education? I won't be very candid, but what's the mindset of the individuals that are in the position that are going to facilitate or even take heed to the things that we're talking about? So again, as I stated in the chat room, we want to be very careful about how we inform of the narrative, because any new and upcoming potential educator or teacher that is bombarded with negative messages may actually opt out. And a lot of the shortage is because we don't have very many to pull from. So we got to really be careful how it is that we're speaking to the issues of education, not to discourage, but to encourage those that are doing right, as well as those that are doing wrong, and those that may potentially come in and do what it is that we need them to do. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Doretta. I want to kind of make some connections here. I heard you make a connection back to what Ms. Kelly was saying about the narrative. And how sometimes that negative narrative discourages people from, like you said and Ms. Kelly said, from wanting to be here, right? Wanting to be here. One question that came to mind as you were sharing, I think you alluded to this as well, was why are parents not attending the board meetings, right? If the board is making an effort to be as accessible as possible, we're hearing from community members that are saying, yes, you can get involved, we're right here. The question then is, why are parents not attending? What is keeping them from attending? We have people in the chat. Sorry, and I'm gonna make one more connection here. The other one, you spoke about who is at the table, who is qualified enough to be at the table. While the numbers may be low of people who may be people of color who may be qualified, we have them, right? So is there something that we can do to encourage them and push them, right, to take those leadership positions? So you know, I'm gonna try to phrase it as a why question.
Why aren't we doing enough to encourage that?
I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna think about it a little bit because I had it. It had to do with leadership within teachers and how we are preparing teachers to take on more leadership roles. Right? Are we preparing our teachers enough to be able to feel capable of taking those leadership roles? I'll leave it at that, and then I'll go with Ms. Martha. Mute. Oh, mute.
I can bring myself. I want to share, first of all, that I come from a family of teachers. My dad retired as a teacher. I am a former teacher, though. And I moved to the home visiting field. Mainly, and this is something that I heard a long time ago, that people in the job, they don't leave because of the job. They usually leave because of poor management. And in my experience as a teacher, I do feel that the teaching part is something that I'm passionate about. And working with children is something that I don't see myself doing another type of job. However, I do feel that there is a disconnection between the teaching component and the administrative component. That sometimes boards making the decisions on how the life of a teacher is and the expectations are so unrealistic. And a lot of the teachers burned out due to this component. Planifications, evaluations, meeting standards, something as simple as the attendance. I noticed that they put so much focus in the attendance of the children at school, but is it a friendly environment for children? Is it safe for children to be at school? And I'm not talking about the safety, the emotional safety of them. I have seen teachers burning up, like to being pushed to the edge when it comes to their mental health. And then and I've seen it, I experienced it myself. Did I mention that my children are in independent studies for the same reason? So when it comes to like the admin component of the teaching, I do feel that there's a disconnection and very unrealistic expectations. And then I'm a teacher at home, at heart. And I try to support teaching as my dearest friends and family members are teachers. But just to wrap, and I'm really passionate about this. So if my voice sounds like this, it comes on that part that I've seen that disconnection. And so I don't know if policies can be, I don't even know how that would look like. But coming from within, is that disconnection that I've seen that it just drives teachers away from the field.
Thank you so much, Miss Martha, and I want to acknowledge that passion, that emotion, that translates into passion, right? That I know how good this system is, and I also know how bad it can be, right? So where do we find the balance? And then the idea that like, what does it take to make these policy shifts? And so that's why we're here today. Okay, that's part of the reason why we're here and why we are embarking in this this long-term work. We're not going to see this change in a day. We're not going to see this change in a year. It's going to take time. Before I go with Miss Nancy, I'm going to call on Mr. Brian, and then I'll go to Miss Nancy. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll make it quick, you guys, just real fast. Going back to what Doretta said, I 100% agree that the community needs to be more involved in the process and getting into the meetings. The problem that we have with that is, again, going back to what we stated earlier, right? So the poverty rate in the Antelope Valley is extremely high. So we have parents who, again, are either working 2 jobs or are driving to other cities to work. And then getting the information of when these meetings are taking place. I don't believe that they're getting to the hands of the parents so that they can be involved. So I think that we have to figure out a way that we can get the community more involved. And if that's, I am a old school boots on the ground. If that means having to go to the neighborhoods and walk to the neighborhoods and go door to door and invite people to the school board meetings and invite individuals to the conversation, the parents to the conversation. And that's what we're going to do. Again, being a parent of 3, working 10 to 12 hours a day, you tend to miss what's going on in the community and just hope everything is going well. But as we see, going back to, I think, what Martha was talking about, leadership, right? People that work in passionate jobs as a teacher, they do that because this is what they want to do. They don't leave because they get tired of doing the work. They leave because of leadership, right? Poor leadership. And I think we always have to start from the head, right? So we need to teach our administrative leaders in the educational system about culture, humility, if that's not happening, right? Understand that there are differences in human beings and how we address them. Not everything you're going to learn from watching TV, you know. So I think it's twofold. Like you said, it's going to take years and years. This has been a very, very long time of how dysfunctional the school districts and school system has been for African Americans. It's going to take some time for us to get up out of it. But I think those are some of those things that we could really start looking at.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brian. Again, and I want to just highlight the reason we're here so that we have space to talk about this and hear all sides of this issue, right? I know you guys kind of see me veering off over here. We're taking notes, we're mapping it out. We're mapping out our whys here, kind of seeing how the connections are flowing. So that when we get to our root cause, we can see how we got there. Miss Kelly, no, Miss Nancy was going to share next. No, wait.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Mi experiencia en este.
Sorry, perdón. So remember to click the globe and select English so that you can hear the interpretation. Down below, you'll see the little globe. You should be able to click English on there, and then you will hear the interpretation of Miss Nancy's words. Disculpe.
Sí, yo mi experiencia para aquí en el Antelope, tengo como 8 meses aquí y me ha costado bastante para la aplicación de mi hija, porque va en primero y tengo maestros, no estoy en contra de los afroamericanos, ¿verdad? Pero el maestro que tiene, me la ha atemorizado tanto que no está tranquila para ir a la escuela. Ella tiene un miedo para ir a la escuela. Y yo he mirado al maestro que habla muy fuerte y hasta les truena los dedos y los tiene como si estuvieras en una base militar para que estén reclutados y tienes que aprender y ella se le hace difícil también porque no sabe inglés, es el idioma también. y yo lo he cambiado para clases de intersección y está muy lleno la espera para que ella tome clases de español e inglés. Y no sé qué hacer porque a veces siento cambiarla de otra escuela o regresarme otra vez a Los Ángeles, porque en la escuela que ella iba en la escuela, ella iba bien contenta, nada más aquí ya es una frustración para ella muy grande de que el maestro le habla muy fuerte y me la regaña mucho. No sé si por el idioma que, o sea, que él hace que entienda de ya, o tienes que aprender porque tú estás aquí y estás conmigo y no sé, pero es muy feo para ella.
Muchas gracias por compartir su experiencia, Miss Nancy. Okay, shifting my brain here. Oh, Miss, let me make a couple of connections really quick, Mr. Etta, and then I will go on to you. So a couple of things that I heard allude back to the culture barrier, the language barrier. The root cause is not that the teacher is of a different background, right? Or that the teacher doesn't speak Spanish. What I'm hearing is burnout, right? What I'm hearing is that there's an impact in the size of groups. Even there is a wait list for the English Spanish program. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, my brain is translating here, guys. Right, so we're seeing, right, how all of this kind of funnels into somewhere. And the question is, how are we going to address that endpoint? Before we get to that, I'm going to go back to Mr. Etta. I'm just kidding. Mr. Etta, feel free to share. You are muted, so I can't hear you. Okay. Can someone put her hand down, and then when she comes back, Mr. Etta, if you're here, if you can hear me while you're stepping away, once you come back, just feel free to put your hand back up and we will call on you again. Thank you so much. Okay. She's back. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was having technical difficulties. I just wanted to kind of speak to, the question was asked about the board meetings. I put some stuff in the chat. Each district has a different date for board meetings, but generally board meetings are at least twice a month. So that's pretty easy to accomplish, twice a month. Board meetings are also held online. I know we talked about parents working down below and not able to attend. But you can kind of, if you're able to at work, I know everybody's not able to, but you can still tune into the meetings with a earbud or something like that to hear what's going on. If you have concerns or questions about what's going on in that district, you actually have an opportunity to submit questions online. Schools make great effort, and I don't want to seem impartial either way. I know there's errors on both ends, but I definitely don't want to appear biased. Schools are making great effort to reach out to parents. I think parents and community has to kind of tap into some of the areas where they're doing that. Each school district has their own website. We can look at websites and identify what the accountability report card outcomes are, when the meetings are. Each school website has a plethora of information about events, parent academies, a lot of different things. So I think it just boils down to really educating the community on how to navigate the school system so that we don't create more of a burden for our educators, teachers, and others, to kind of eliminate some of that burnout and show that we're actually working together and we want to understand the systems so that we can make these changes. So just kind of wanted to highlight that. I'm available to answer questions anybody has at a later time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Etta. And I want to point out that might be a gap, right? That might be a gap, that there's efforts on behalf of the school districts, of the boards. And then we hear parents want to also get involved. And yet somehow we continue to each be in our own little circle of like, how do we get there? How do we get to the middle ground? And I wanna just kind of see if we can put that on a post-it or
Mhm.
maybe we can put it up here. Well, we are, again, tracking everything over here. That is a gap that we have to consider. There, and we know this, we know that there, again, it's not like the AV isn't just sitting around waiting, right? Everyone is in one way or another getting involved. But the reason that we are looking for the root causes today is that so that we don't all continue to get involved in our own circles, right? We want to come together and eliminate those root causes.
There are huge gaps in understanding roles and processes. Loretta put in the chat box.
Gaps in understanding roles
So those
and
are the
processes.
gaps,
Those
yeah.
are, yeah, those are part of the gaps.
Understanding what?
Roles
Roles and
and
processes.
processes.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a quick minute here to look at some of the notes, and I'm gonna keep poking at these questions with why. Okay, so give me just a minute.
So we know the this, we know the training, we know management for now. We're looking at also could it be inappropriate policies or
I'm wondering if we can categorize this, if we can create some categories. Is there any way that we can point the camera and maybe even get it just a little bit closer or somehow have them zoom into this as well?
That's the closest I can
Like
get.
the photos? I don't know if that is legible enough, guys who are on the.
I don't think so.
Can you bring it over to your, like to the other side of your.
Okay.
The only thing is it because it's in different colors.
Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
it's not clear.
It's not clear? Okay.
No.
Okay. No worries.
It's, you can
We
see
can
the
do this
paper, but
categories here, we can do the
It's because the
categories.
wall's white. So if the color, if the paper was yellow, it would be different.
Okay.
No
so
worries. So we can break it into categories.
we'll have counting from the side.
A little bit more this side, a little bit more. There you go. Looking for a balance between virtual and in person, so bear with us. Okay. So thinking of the special student population, again, we're talking English language learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, being Black, Latino, Native American,
Disabilities.
students with disabilities, and unhoused. Okay. Some of the I want to say categories. If we had to categorize some of these causes.
Yeah, but I'm talking
I need
about,
to
yeah.
see, I need to be
Yeah.
able to see it, sorry.
And you could cover that one, that one's just, yeah.
Let me bring this over. Okay. I want to keep poking at the lack of cultural training. And if we have anyone, both virtual or in person, who can maybe share a little bit about what the training for teachers is like. I know we had Ms. Martha, who I don't know if she's still there. Yeah, she's there. But anyone else is welcome to speak to the on this. What type of training do teachers receive? And I really want to put into consideration the fact that the Antelope Valley, if there is training that is taking place down in downtown LA, right? What that means for our teachers. is this training accessible? Does this do these type of trainings account for rural community living? And then if anyone would like to share, please go ahead and raise your hand. Feel free to put your comments in the chat. Anyone here, again, I know that some of these questions might require a little bit of time to process, so feel free to take some time. No rush, no rush.
It'd be interesting to also hear, like, if the teachers are given some of these trainings just when they're onboarded, when they first come in to be a teacher, or is this something that is done yearly, right? Or quarterly? Is this ongoing? Or is it just when they trained, and is it just watching a video that's a 30-minute video and then that's what they consider training?
Yeah, I see Mr. Anna put a chat. If you want me to mute so that you can.
Go ahead, Mr. Etta.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Okay. So as far as the trainings and stuff are concerned, I think within all systems, there's mandatory training hours. And depending upon your level, your position in the system, whether you're administrative, line, certified and classified, teachers are certified staff. I heard somebody say something about certified. So that means that they have certification to do what they're doing. Classified staff are your other staff members, your custodians, your teachers' aides, and things like that. But the point I'd like to make is that oftentimes there are mandatory trainings that are in place. There are trainings that come up as a result of incidents that happen. More recently, within the past 7 or more years, we've had a lot of trainings on bias, implicit, unconscious bias, things of that nature. I think I'm going to stand on my premise that it's not always the training that's a problem. It is how the training is implemented and how it is reinforced and enforced within these environments, the level of accountability to the trainings. So we can preach trainings all day long, and yeah, they'll put trainings in there, but that's not really going to solve your problem, because if your partakers of the training are not buying into it, they're just going through the motions. It's a waste of money and it's a waste of time. Now, community can get together and identify what are the trainings. I think this is something that we might need to do. What are the mandated trainings that educational staff are supposed to have? Look at that list of training. Are there other trainings that some of the professionals that are within the group, within the team, see might be helpful with helping make some of the changes? Who do you talk to about those changes? Do we actually know who is identifying what changes are needed? Do we know the role of the Teachers Association and how they communicate with the administration or the superintendent of education? So again, it all falls back down to education as a whole. We're working on issues dealing with education with our children, but we also must be steadfast in working on educating our community on how to understand the school system and how to navigate it so that we don't put more pressure on them. We can add pressure that will burn them out. We've already identified verbally in this group that people can take things personal and then they can retaliate against people's kids. I think I read something on Facebook today where they were talking about administrator mad dogging somebody's kids. That should not happen. But until we find actual bona fide ways to go, not attack, but go with some solutions. How can we help? I think we can resolve some of these problems, and those that are in the way, they will eventually move out the way, but focus on those that are trying to do what it is we want them to do. Thank you.
Greta, I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree 100% in terms of it's not just saying we have a training, but how is the training delivered? What's the message in the training? And we were in a retreat yesterday, and we were talking about, we've been doing this trauma-informed masterclass and train the trainers, and many of us have heard agencies, or we've worked in agencies where you know, you do that 1 hour video and all of a sudden your agency is saying, oh, we're trauma informed. But in reality, if you're not putting on that lens and you're not really doing the work under that lens, then if you're not walking the walk, then you're not trauma informed. And I think that's kind of like similar in terms of like, yeah, the trainings are there, but how are the trainings done? How are they delivered? What setting are they delivered in? Are they delivered as just watch this video and you earn your hours? Or is this something that's actually collaborative with other teachers or with other trainers in there? So I think you're right. Like, we really have to be conscientious of the fact that maybe, you know, it's looking at the overall picture and the bigger picture, not just focusing on the little detail of training hours or, you know, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sylvia.
I love that we have Mr. Etta here. And you know, the important thing is to get our gears turning, to continue asking why, right? Why are things still the same way they have been? Why, despite many efforts, we continue to say the same systemic issues? So in terms of cultural training, another question that I have is, who's developing the content?
That's it,
right? Who is developing the content?
right there.
And how does it go about getting implemented? Because, like Sylvia mentioned, and Mr. Etta mentioned, if we're doing it just to check off the box and say I completed the training, 100% of my staff completed the training, maybe now I qualify for some additional funds, right? What is that process like? I feel like I'm going to leave you guys with more questions than answers today. I think that we are going to continue pushing
A question?
to ask for why.
Oh, Brian has a question. Okay.
And so we need to have continue this conversation, right? We need to really dig deep. Mr. Ryan.
I have a question and a comment, I guess. So I'm 100% with what you guys are saying as far as training, you know, being a manager, and we can force training all day long, but if they haven't bought into the vision of why they're training, then it's just another class, right? They may have the head knowledge, but really don't are not buying into it, and that's the thing. And I don't know. And I think that our teachers are severely just, you know, underlooked, and we need to really raise our teachers up, right? Because they have one of the hardest jobs, I believe, in our community, is raising our children or teaching our children, right? But I wanted to ask this question about funding, right? So we looked at the report and looked at where the schools are, and we see on the east side of Lancaster and east side of Palmdale, where primarily, you know, you have a lot of Black and Latinos, and we earn a very low percentage of the income in this valley. So how does it look like when we're funding these schools, right? Is the funding comparable to the schools on the west side of Quartz Hill? And then if that's not happening, is that an issue where we're getting staff, right? We're not paying staff properly or able to put in STEM into the schools, you know? So I look at the systemic issues when it comes to redlining and how things are being lined up. So, and this is a question to the experts, because I'm clearly not an expert on this, but funding, is that an issue that we're seeing in our school districts where we're having very, very poor scores?
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, for sharing. And I appreciate you saying, you know, like I'm not an expert, but you know what? We all have some sort of experience with the education system. I think it's important to acknowledge that. And we need to be able to provide the context through storytelling, right? Because our story matters. The experience that we have with the education system is not something we just made up. It's not something that I went through by myself. We know that these situations continue to happen, right? And again, the reason we're focusing on the special student population is because for some reason, the Black, Latino, and Native American, those who are experiencing homelessness, students with disabilities continue to be the most affected. So we have to figure out the why. Ms. Doretta.
Yes, I just wanted to say in regards to Mr. Johnson's question, some of the funding is tied into the development of the LCAP. And this is why most districts, all districts, kind of put out special meeting notifications to parents about the development of the LCAP meetings, which actually encompasses information that supports which amount of fundings districts get for the students in their district. In terms of identifying needs, I would say that I have to really give great kudos to my Latino community, because introducing or implementing and enforcing the fact that ESL is a component that is used with our Latino students and families has really assisted greatly in boosting those academic achievement scores, even for our non-English speaking students. Okay, so now within the Black community, in terms of academic challenges, there are great language barriers. Perhaps we need to come back and have the discussion about Ebonics and how that would tie into improving English literacy scores for our Black and Brown students. But specifically pertaining to the funding, this is where your African American Action Committee meetings at your district, your Latino Action Committee meetings at your district. These are the areas where parents and stakeholders actually can get in and have kind of like give suggestions, offer their opinions early on, so that when the development of this LCAP comes up, all of this information is in the literature that they have to review to make decisions. So just kind of, we can't be active everywhere, but if we come together as a community, we can identify people that maybe have a little time to do that and can report back to the community. These were some of the findings or some of the things that were discussed at the meeting. How do we want to look at that? But it comes with being collectively involved and extremely organized. So hopefully that answered some of the question.
Thank you, Mr. Rada. Yes. So I've added here the equitable distribution of resources. I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, guys, but would you consider this to be a root cause?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Possibly. Because a lot of what we're talking about here, a lot of what we've said really goes back to an unequitable distribution of resources, possibly funding, training that really doesn't do much for us. Possibly, not saying it doesn't, right? Because we still have to ask those questions, but what does that look like so we can better understand it? And then decide if whether yes, this is it, or no, it's not, right? Maybe it was something else.
When I think about what Mr. Renner just said about getting the information out and then being able to explain it, being able to make changes, things like that. When I look at the two separate situations as far as the teachers, sometimes when you pull out their handbook and they have, like you said, things have been there forever, 40, 50 years, these models have already been there. Could it possibly be that because of the cultural changes, because of the different identities and the different religious backgrounds, and even though we're supposed to separate church and state, but you have to come in with ideas of this is the way I'm going to teach based upon my religion or my culture or whatever, and they shape their classroom with those ideas. Sometimes they're not supposed to, but that's our individual personality. It does come in how we interact with people, like how she was talking about her child's teacher. his demeanor may be based upon his own individual cultural background as to how he acts. So could it be that there needs to be training and a meeting to say, take the pamphlet, let's go line by line, and some things need to be revised. And you can have a meeting like this with teachers of all different backgrounds and cultural experiences, whatever, to say, this line doesn't make sense in 2023. It made sense in 1983, but not 2023. Let's change it. Let's pull all the different ideas, just like you're doing right here, with everybody in the room who's a teacher and has a stake and has an experience, and let's change some of these models. Let's change some of these concepts to come into the future, instead of what was made 50 years ago, instead of what was made by a room that was all white, versus now we have a little bit of everybody in this room. Let's change some things. And then when it comes to the parents need to feel as if they have a voice and they have a say. And it could be they're not getting the information because they're, like everybody said, they're either working or they feel as if their voice is not heard. So then we have to go out, like Brian said, I'm a firm believer of that. We gotta start knocking on doors. If there's a community building in the apartment buildings, we gotta say, hey, ma'am, Ms. Johnson, there's a meeting about the school on Friday, or there's a meeting at the church. Talk to the churches and say, hey, can we use your community room after service on Sunday to let the parents know these are the concerns in the school, and find out what their concerns are. Take that information back to the district. But if the parent is not being aware of the flyer, even though it was sent out in this kid's backpack and they threw it in the trash, the parent doesn't know. So we have to go to the library, to the soccer field, to the dance class, to the church, and say, this is the information. This is what we want you to know. Do you have any questions? Come to the meeting. Or we send a representative from the school district to wherever they are and gather the information and take it back to the district, to the meeting. Because sometimes the parents just don't come. It could be lack of documentation. They don't feel like they're gonna be heard, or they're gonna, be arrested for whatever. Or they just feel like nobody's listening to them, so why should I say anything? We have to sometimes go where they are to hear what they have to say, and then take it to the big picture. But gather up all these little bitty ideas and put it together so that the people who need to hear will say, this is what the community is saying, because sometimes they never get to that meeting. They're never at that room, at that table. And a lot of times the parents just don't feel like they're being heard, or the teachers don't feel like they're being heard, because the administrators are making all the decisions, and nobody's sitting around like this asking them, what's going on in your classroom? What's going on in your community? The teachers will talk in their room, but the administrators never hear what they really have to say. That's my opinion.
Thank you so
That's
much.
what we want.
I'm over here taking notes because I need to write this down before I it kind of leaves my brain. But what I'm hearing is racial inequity. I'm hearing historical racism. Racism.
And I heard cultural humility trainings for teachers and administrators.
Which translate to cultural responsibility, right?
And also grassroots outreach, door to door.
It's important.
Okay.
It's still important.
And these are some of the, when we think back in terms of, as we get closer and closer to creating our community change agenda, these ideas can come in terms of when we start thinking about how are we gonna be addressing this root cause. The projects come out of that, right? And some of these projects can be the door to door. Some of these projects can be the trainings for parents at churches, at community centers, at wherever it may be. So we can think about that when we start getting into planning, because what's gonna happen is once we develop our community change agenda, we're gonna have to do a plan. We have to develop a plan on how we're gonna start implementing our community change agenda. So hold on to those ideas, because these are gonna be part of what our community projects will look like.
And so just to just kind of because I'm a visual person, what I'm seeing is that what we come up, well, you guys can't see it online, right? But so it's okay. The grassroots movement, the really getting out there, getting the community to be able to come and speak on their own behalf, right? Finding a way to like close that gap of for some reason, we just can't seem to get together. Once we're able to close that gap, what we will see is that these will start, not that they'll go away. I'm thinking a teeter-totter, right?
Mhm.
The more grassroots movement, the more we get out there, the more that the community can work together with all these
Tools, right?
no, with all the districts, the city councils, what do we call them?
The boards, education boards.
They're we're gonna see a shift in power dynamics, right? Thinking stakeholders in the community, but that's not the right word, but it's okay. We're gonna see that shift, right? And so where there was historical racism or where there is historical racism, we want to get to the place where we say we've taken action to counteract the effects of racial inequity, the effects of historical racism. Okay?
And we know that we cannot change it completely, as maybe it's not gonna ever exist. But what we have to look at is what little jabs are we doing to start throwing it off balance?
Balance, right? So that we see that shift. Mr. Etta.
Yes, I love what you just said. I mean, that is so very powerful and important because I'm thinking whatever our approach is, it has to be solution oriented. And again, not based from a perspective of attacking. I know that I have a pretty strong dominant speaking voice, and sometimes that's misinterpreted as attacking. So I pretty much know what attack is. However, when it comes to, the school, I have to empathize within the educational system, considering that a lot of social perils have actually infiltrated the education system. So when we talk about academic achievement rates, suspensions, dropouts, and things like that, we have to look at the level of community issues and social issues that educational environments, teachers, educators, administrators are currently dealing with. Let's look at drugs for an example. There's an issue with vapes. Many of our schools are having vape problems in the districts. Well, we understand the parents' concerns. They don't want their kids exposed to that, and especially the parents that don't have that issue in their home or in their community. The problem that I see, even as a board member in the school, I empathize with my parents. However, I also empathize with school districts because school districts don't supply the drugs. The drugs come from within the community. So, what can the community do with the school to support keeping these drugs out of the school? If we talk about bringing metal detectors and search dogs and things like that, does that make it more inhumane? Is that what we want to see? We don't want to see that necessarily. However, if that's what it takes to keep all of our children safe, then those means are going to have to be put in place specifically for the safety. So those are some of the things that we kind of have to think about when weighing out what responsibility the school has and what responsibility the community has, because school is having a hard time with education for policing the community. And I say that with all due respect.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ed, and I appreciate you remaining solution focused. I think that is very important that we all do. I think that a lot of these issues, right, when we talk about them, our frustration shows, our emotion shows, our passion shows, that doesn't mean that we can't work together. As a matter of fact, it's why we need to work together, right? And then I also think you mentioned, we can't control everything. Through the work that we are doing, one of the big goals is that we address things that are within our control, because we have to be realistic, right? Hopefully from the next meeting, we can see more community members join us to have this conversation, because we do need those key stakeholders. We do need those administrators to come in and share that information with us, to be able to, for them to be able to tell their story, what it's like from their perspective, from their lens. We need that to guide our community change agenda as well. So I really appreciate everyone's input. David? Did you- Yeah, you might.
Please, sorry about that.
Either you shout from across the room or you come to the mic.
Okay,
Just don't drop the mic, David. Don't.
all right. So yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to mention here is, as I'm seeing everybody talk about what our potential root cause may be, is that I've noticed that we don't want to antagonize the system. It seems like what we're discussing here is kind of a level-headed conversation in which we're realizing that what we're doing here is collecting, because the education boards, the powers at play are not enemies of ours, but it's a platform that we're just not utilizing, or we're not retaining a voice within it. So it seems like as we're talking about this and we're addressing the needs to tackle historical racism still taking its place today, in tackling our educational outcomes for BIPOC students, ELL students, our disabled students even, is creating that advocacy. And I think that that's where we're seeing the greatest importance here. In addressing that, parents don't have time, parents aren't able to connect with their students' education. Here, I'm actually happy that Doretta is able to kind of clarify that, is that there actually is a platform that parents are able to kind of utilize to connect with their students' education, right? So it's a matter of just communication here, it seems, that we have an idea in mind, but it seems like we just need to coalesce here. And it seems like that can be one of our root cause, that we have a community buy-in to a vision, a shared collective vision in which we can create that collective agreement, which here look like with our community agenda, our community change agenda, in which we're able to kind of sit down, realize where exactly we're facing issues in policy, where exactly we're facing issues in a lack of training, where it is exactly that our students aren't receiving the resources they need to be successful in their education, especially for students in a critical time such as pre-K and kindergarten, which is ultimately our goal, right? We want to see better outcomes for students within that age range, being such a critical component to setting themselves up for the rest of their educational careers. So that's where I wanted to mention that I think that, to maybe boil it down a little bit, creating that collective agreement, that collective community agreement, to talk to our board, talk to our leaders, talk to our educators and administrators, and mentioning, hey, these are issues that we're facing, and these are where our students are at home letting us know that the problem is going to be key as we move forward in our conversation. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you, David. That was great.
Thank you, David.
That was awesome.
And that's also the why we're building these tools. That's why we created the state of the child report, right? Specifically for the Antelope Valley. So that based on like these findings, we can then go to these meetings and say, hey, here's some recommendations. Here's what we are finding through these reports, and here's what we are hearing amongst the community. How can we then work collectively to address it? How are we on time, Stephanie?
We have 2:45, so about 14 minutes.
14. Thank you so much. Okay, we have about 15 more minutes, guys. What else? Any other comments here? My in-person group has been a little bit shy, with the exception of Ms. Kelly. Okay.
She's looking like a deer in headlights, like, don't call on me.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure we hear everyone's voice.
Any other comments?
How about online?
If not, we can move on. We can only. Are there any other comments online? Any other observations that you have seen? Because we've had a lot here as we go through this. Doretta. Yes, Miss Doretta.
I know I was supposed to be quiet today, but I can't help it. I'm so passionate about this conversation. I also want to just say, I love what you say when you talk about, okay, no, we're not going to be able to get rid of all racism. We're just not. And we can work steadfastly towards eliminating it. But I think that where we are here with this coalition, finding ways to kind of work around it, working with the people to get us up to par so that we can change it very strategically, very tactfully. Martin Luther King has a quote. It says, "Those who want peace must learn to strategize as effectively as those who want war." So your statement is most fitting because those who want to maintain a sense of racism, those are the ones that want war. But as long as we continue to work together and strategize collectively, we're going to establish peace as we've established peace in this coalition. So as usual, I'm really proud and happy to be a part of the Best Start and AVPH, what you all are doing here. Continue to do the great work. And I'm a committed member. So whatever I can do to continue to push us forward and help us understand, I'm committed to that too, because I believe community education in this sense is so very important.
So agree with what she just said. We as individuals, we have to keep having the conversation. Even if we don't make it to the big boardroom. The murmur is swelling, the conversations are being had. People are the buzz. That's where I was going. People are saying things. So even if today, if we leave here today with nothing else but each one of us walk out of here and start having the conversation. If it's just in our neighborhood, as beauty shops, our women's group, whatever we're involved in, start asking, what do you feel is going on in the school? What do you feel we need to do different? How do you, even if you don't have kids in the school, you still have an opinion. Yes. You know, what do you think we need to do different? Start taking notes. And then the next time we come together, we can put it in a pile. And as you have it up here, just say, okay, what can we tackle off? And if we see there's a connection, you have 20 people have the same thing on the piece of paper. And we see that's what we need to deal with right there. But the conversation has to be had. Because we don't know what everybody's thinking or feeling. And in their own individual neighborhood, we don't know. It could be the kids just walking up and down the street. Okay, let's figure out why they're walking up and down the street. But there is a commonality amongst all of us feeling that something needs to change. But we have to start talking. And none of us may ever make it to the school district, the board, to get in that room with the people who really make the decisions. But they will know we're saying something. Something's being said. The more of us start talking and the more of us start talking to other people, they're going to hear about it. So I just think today, if we don't do nothing else, when we all leave from here today, let's start having these conversations and making notes so that when we come back together, we can share what we talked about. That to me feels like I'm doing something.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I'll share this. I started having this conversation with my next door neighbor. This conversation. She works at the school that's directly across the street from me. And so as we're talking, one of her comments was, it takes the parents being involved with their children. The education starts at home. I said, so what is your perspective of the teacher's responsibility? The teachers are all in, they just need the support of the families. So again, that connectivity between parents, teachers, administrators, it begins, but the conversation is, I'm taking out the trash. I run into my neighbor. She's there. What's going on? Girl, let me tell you, and I did give her some cheesecake that we had from the meeting, but I said, here's some cheesecake for you and your family. And we start talking about, this is what we're doing at Best Start. I really want you to come. And then we get on the reading scores and what the involvement of the teachers are with the students and what's going on. She said it takes the families sitting with their children, even at dinner time, when they're getting them to talk and find out, how's your day going? What's going on? What are you learning? Talk to me. How are you feeling? And so when we have these community, like you just said, Ms. Kelly, in our personal sphere, our neighbors, our family members, our friends, our church
folks, people at the gas station. Whenever you start having these conversations, even online, your Facebook, I mean, man, you can start a whole conversation on Facebook just about this. You begin to see the impact. And like you said, they will know the swelling of the top. Then we provide the data. Then we know what we are focusing on. And then that gives us momentum. We're not just abstract trying to hit everything all at once in one time. We're targeting one thing that will make a difference in the system. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's another thing we want to highlight in terms of community organizing and how we go about, in a sense, declaring our community change agenda. We also have to have the data that backs it up, right? It's not just my feelings.
Right.
I feel this way, therefore things have to change. That is an integral part, but the data is also what is guiding a lot of this work. Right, so I think that's really important to acknowledge. I'd like to invite you all to read the State of the Child report again and again and again and again. And let's see what we can get from there as we continue to have these conversations on the special student population. We will be jumping into challenges in the Antelope Valley as well. And so what we see is a flow, right? A lot of the challenges in the Antelope Valley contribute to the disparities among the special student population. So if we can all take some time, if you don't have a copy of this, the State of the Child report, I think we'll figure out a way to get you a copy. We'll put that on Sylvia to figure out.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do like a coffee meetup or something and we can bring that to you as well. Because again, this is what is guiding a lot of the work. The data maps as well are very helpful. If anyone wants to kind of like sit around and have a small group discussion, we can do that as well. I think I'd be really interested in doing.
I think that would be an interesting. Oh, you go say something.
I just mentioned, all this talking to our neighbors or the community. I just wanted to throw it out, I don't know, but can we also provide a survey of all the things that we want to focus? And nowadays, even put us, the schools can put this, send those surveys to the family. That's a good idea.
That's a great sending out surveys.
Those parents that most of them they're not yet, they cannot come to this meeting. Because I know it's parent participation is very, very hard in the community. It's always been, and throw it out in Spanish and English.
Right. That's a really good idea. Sometimes the parents, they want to be anonymous. They don't want to say what their name on something, but at least they get their opinion.
Throw, at least all that information that, for
How long would it take to put something together like
Well,
that before we have a survey put together before we meet next time that we can pass out?
We will work on that. I don't know if we can do it that quick, but I will talk with David because he's helping us do that, putting surveys together as our data person. That's an awesome and a great idea. And I put that on there with a star so we can work on that expeditiously because we do give surveys. But now we have a different objective. Oh, Sylvia, with a Y, you just came back in time. So the suggestion was, and it was a good one, to send out, or as we're having these community talks with our neighbors, our friends, and what, if we can do surveys, if we can have surveys available even to send to parents at schools with our neighbors, can we do surveys? That we can gather information and their thoughts about what we're talking about. And they wanted to know if we could get those surveys done or if we could have it done by our next meeting, which is next week. Next week, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or could we make one for the Best Start Facebook page to where we could share it?
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing where we encourage them, please watch, because here's the thing. Those who are here right now can follow along with the conversation. And this is why it's so important that our members come, However, we record, all of this is recorded, it's on our YouTube channel, so it's a great way for them to kind of catch up and get involved and see, okay, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? And how can I join in now? So that I'm not kind of joining in all lost, right? Because we also want to make sure that where we are right now, we continue the conversation from this standpoint. Because a lot of the times what will happen is that we start going into tangents, right? And so at some point we want to, of course, get to our community change agenda, but we do need more involvement, more community involvement. I think, you know, I'll leave that up to Sylvia to.
Well, both
are good ideas,
but
paper and
yes. Electronic.
Yes.
Some
Yeah,
people don't
and I
do
think-
electronic.
And the more I think about
I
this,
see
the
you,
more I
Diana.
think that, it's something, you know, cause there's a lot of times that there's just surveys to do surveys and what are we really getting out of it, right? And I think in a survey like this, I think what's important about this is really kind of checking to see either how big the gap is or really how much of a disconnect there is between schools and parents or schools and boards, schools and districts. And once we measure that, we could see, look at how huge this disconnect really is. We did a survey of, you know, 100 parents or, you know, in different areas of the Antelope Valley. And then, you know, and it's a small little survey, a small little thing, but it gives us an idea of how big the disconnect is. And as we're doing these surveys, do we want to then do a follow-up 6 months down the road and say, now we've given you resources, we've done this, we've even brought in people to talk to us. You know, we did a special workshop, a Zoom workshop for parents in English, a Zoom workshop for parents in Spanish that really brought in resources from the school district. And then after that, do the survey again and take a look at, are we really then narrowing that gap, or is that gap still there?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that'll help us address the gap, right? So that we don't just try to address the root cause and then that gap is still there and right?
Yeah.
Miss Diana had a comment. After that, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
We're gonna wrap it up.
I'm thinking we need to really get some more teachers involved in this too. And this is not a time they can come. We
Right,
need maybe a weekend type caucus or something,
a caucus.
a coffee.
Coffee
and
with a
invite some of the
teacher?
Teachers in the area, ask them these questions too. I think we need both sides. We need the thing from the parents and we also need the teacher. They're probably the most affected by all this. So if they have big classes and things like this, they can still get stuff.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to addressing our gaps.
Yeah.
What are we missing in this table, right? Alrighty,
Okay,
food, Roar, Parent Council, East Side Musical.
Roar Parent Council.
I think we're gonna tap into Ms. Doretta for a lot of this.
Oh, yes, we are.
I'm gonna leave you all with Doretta. She's gonna wrap this up in.
Darrell.
Doretta!
That happens to us all the
I've
time.
been talking to Doretta all day now.
I know. Okay, so listen, we're gonna wrap it up, but I want to get your takeaway from the presentation today. I want you to, for those of you who are online, just drop it in the chat box, or you could come off mute and give me one takeaway from the presentation today, and what would you like to see happen from this point? And I'll start with the folks in the room. So, what was one of your takeaways from today's presentation?
Let's start talking.
Let's start talking. Okay, that's one. Let's start talking. Anyone else?
Let's do planning.
Huh?
Let's plan.
Let's do more planning. Okay. Okay,
More information.
get more information. What would you
We're
like?
also getting closer to our CCA, and once we have our community change agenda, that's when we go into full planning mode, right? And that's when we go into full project mode.
A entrar a donde hay juntas para informarnos más.
To have more meetings, to be more informed, to be more informed, to get more information to the parents so that they're more informed.
Nancy, y esos son parte de los planes de los proyectos, o sea, ya cuando terminemos nuestra agenda de la comunidad, ya que lleguemos al final, en ese momento ya empezamos a hacer planes de cómo vamos a poder enfocarnos en el área de donde escogemos, ¿verdad? Entonces, en eso es cuando empiezan los proyectos, las ideas de qué juntas, qué talleres, qué otras cosas se van a necesitar. Entonces, quédese con esas ideas para cuando ya lleguemos a ese punto, sacar todas esas ideas. ¿Verdad?
Okay. Anyone, do I have anyone online? What was a takeaway from today's presentation? You can drop it online or come off mute and say it. And what would you like to see happen from this point moving forward? Do I have anyone online that said anything? Y'all gonna have to read the comment box for me. If there's anybody, nothing? No? No comment? No closing reflections? Okay. Next slide. Oh, Doretta, go ahead, share. Okay.
Continue education for students and community.
Okay, continue education for.
So, you want to talk about this, Carla?
Carla? Carla has, she would like to share this upcoming event. She's coming. Come on, Carla.
I'm coming. Okay. I just wanted to share that the Little Rock Rural Town Council is having their 3rd annual parade. I thought it'd be a great way to get the best our community, doing more like outdoor stuff. So we just wanted to present it to you, see if there was any interest. There's a couple of ways that we could go about it. We can go just all as Best Start, or we can do sort of a train of floats, where we have a Best Start float, and then we have other community members who are part of the Best Start. You can have like a business or an organization that you kind of want to showcase in the parade. That'd be wonderful. If you guys can send me comments to
What we were thinking is if everybody wanted to think about it, and if this is something we want to do as a Best Start community, there's a theme, Merry Christmas around the world, but it's something to think about. Like Carla said, we could walk the parade, we could get creative on some of the stuff that if we wanted to do this. And when we meet next week, why don't we all come back and see if this is something we want to do? And then, because it's right around the corner. So we could start planning and getting to it if this is something that Best Start wants to do.
And if you have any additional questions, my colleague Stephanie will drop my email in the chat. Feel free to email me, carla.garzon@all4kids.org.
That's a good way to get information about who we are and what we're doing out there. Visibility, marketing.
Like
Okay.
I'm already envisioning like a train, and it's the Best Start Polar Express, and each little train can be a different part of the world, but also like then advertise, like all our little organizations who got grants from Best Start, even have them there, right? Like, again, I just.
She got big
No
vision.
pressure.
No pressure. No pressure, just big vision.
Yeah, then at the end, at the church, with vendors and stuff like that too.
Yeah, right.
Great
Yeah.
job.
And then we could have all of our information and the surveys and then talking about what we're planning on doing. Just a good way to get the community aware of, oh, what are y'all doing? This is what we're doing, honey. Glad you asked. Come on over. All right, next slide. Also, we want to remind you that we are currently doing our Engaging with Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Danielle Johnson. We started in September. We still have several more weeks. If you would like to join, feel free to join that Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. Next slide. All right, we are coming to the conclusion, you all. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram. You can find us on Linktree and YouTube. Again, you can share our YouTube channel, and we invite you all. Subscribe to the Best Start AV YouTube channel and then share it. And that way, the information that we gave today in the discussion, it's on our YouTube channel. You can go back and review it, and you can share it with your friends on Facebook. You can also share it with your family, your neighbors, and say, hey, check this out.
The links are in the chat.
Yeah, and the links are in the chat. Yeah. All right. Don't forget, since we're talking about surveys, take our survey. We want your feedback today. Please do so. And thank you for joining us today. I feel like we were on the treadmill today, y'all. I got my workout.
My brain.
I know. I feel like I'm doing my squats and running and everything else. My brain was exercising. Y'all have a great day and we will see you back. Actually, listen, we'll be back next week. We took a week off, so we condensed our meeting. So we are going to have back-to-back meetings. So again, we will be back with you next
Come to our
Thursday.
new building.
Yes. For those of you who can attend, sign up to attend in person and come see our new resource, our Children's Bureau Resource Center.
Family Resource Center.
Family Resource Center. It is off the chart. It is, and I don't know how else to say it, but it is the bomb. It's the bomb. I'm still trying to get them to let me put my name on a cubicle, but they say, yeah, no, Darrell, you. But it's so nice. So come on in. What's the address? What is it?
525 West Avenue P4.
We'll drop it in the chat.
We'll drop it in the chat. But for those of you, you don't have to Google it if you know where the old Mulligans are. That's all I gotta say. But we'll drop the address in the chat. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you next week, same time. Bye, everyone.